So, my 26F wife, call her M, cheated on me, 27M, with a friend of mine, 27M, call him J for the story's sake. A bit of backstory. We met when I was 22 at another friend's wedding. She was a good friend of the bride and I the groom, and they sat us at that table so we would get together. When I first seen her, I was completely taken back by how beautiful she was, and when she sat down and we began to talk, we found out we had a lot of things in common. We clicked instantly. We talked for a while, ate the dinner, and took to the dance floor. We danced and drank through the night. We ended up kissing in the middle of the dance floor, and when we pulled away, our friends, the bride and groom, came up to us and asked what was up between us. Though we're really excited to play matchmaker, we just shrugged it off and carried on with our night. We left not exchanging numbers, but about a week later I got a text from her asking me out. Bride gave her my number. I of course said yes, and it turned into a relationship. The relationship was great. Other than small arguments, we never really fought, and it was never anything really serious. I eventually asked her to marry me about 2 years into us dating, and we were married less than a year later. We were married for a little more than a year when it all came crashing down on me. Just before our first anniversary, there were little things that were irritating me. She became more guarded of her phone, girls' nights became more frequent, and our sex life was almost non-existent. I had brought this up on multiple occasions, but was brushed off, and that I'm letting my insecurities get to me. She would continue go on as if what I felt and tried to communicate didn't matter to her, so I became colder and colder. I stopped giving her a goodbye kiss as I leave for work, and unless it was something important, we hardly spoke. One night while she slept, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails, and messenger apps, and found nothing. And from reading stories on here, I checked her car. I grabbed her keys and looked in her car, and found a second phone. I knew in that instant what was going on. But I wanted all the evidence for when I call her out. I didn't want her to say something like it had only happened once or anything stupid like that. I looked through the phone and found only one number I read, though every message. I connected the phone to my computer and printed out every message and every photo and spent the night researching divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my at-home office reading bios of lawyers and found one that I liked and emailed him, but as it was a Saturday, he wasn't in the office. I then wanted to know who the guy was, so I grabbed my phone, typed the number I wanted to call, and pretend I'm Spectrum, because who doesn't have Spectrum, but Jay's contact popped up. It took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together, but when I did, I blew up. I was yelling and cursing in my office, and my wife opened the door to check on me, but when I see her, I told her to get the F out. She closed the door and went to our room. I had never cursed at my wife or raised my voice above a normal volume. All of day, I never left my office. I was just silently raging, just glaring at the wall. I called one of my friends, groom from the wedding, and tell him I need to go for a drink and asks if he'll come with me. He must have heard something in my voice because he asked if I was okay. I told him I wasn't and I really need to drink. So without word, I took all the printouts and left to go to the bar. I arrived first, ordered 4 shots of Jack and a beer. I was on my last shot when my friend, call him T, arrived and asked what's going on. I told him straight out M's cheating. He gave me sympathy, and I asked if he wanted to know with who and told him it was Jay. He became visibly irritated. He was the one that introduced me to Jay, and all he could say was, "I'm sorry," over and over. Jay and I were never super close. We wouldn't ask one another to hang out, but if we see each other at a get-together, we were friendly. I told T don't mention this to anyone as I had just found out and I haven't even spoken to M or a lawyer yet. I asked him not to tell his wife, and if she asked what was wrong with me to say I'm having problems at work, he agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night, then I called an Uber and went home around 3 a.m. It was the first time I looked at my phone since I called T, and there was missed calls, a bunch of texts, all from M, asking me where I was when I'd be home and if I was okay. I got home and she was asleep on the couch. I just walked up to our bedroom and went to sleep. I woke up with her in the bed, so I got dressed and left the house. I went to go pick up my car and go to my office and buried myself in work for the day and went back home around 10 p.m. To my surprise, my wife was there to greet me, and she told me she had made me dinner. She asked if I wanted her to heat it up. I told her no and went to bed. She followed soon after asking what's been wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone and that I wanted to sleep. She kept pestering me. Eventually I snapped and yelled, "Stop, I am trying to sleep, go away." The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day, and I confirmed and got ready for my day. I went downstairs to leave, and M had made breakfast asking to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She started by saying, "I've been acting different and going on and on about how I changed, and she wants to know why I told her work has been stressful and soon it would be all over." I finished up and told her I've got to go. I went to my office and counted down the minutes to go meet the lawyer. When I left, I told my assistant I'm going out to lunch with a client. My wife would call my work sometimes, and left. The meeting with the lawyer went well, and I handed over all I had gathered on her, and the lawyer had told me, "Well, I'm sorry for all that's going on, but I'm happy you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an at-fault state, so your wife has no claim on most of your money." I told him I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking I've got to divorce her as soon as possible. He asked to keep the evidence, but I told him I'd prefer you to just make copies, as I haven't told my wife I knew yet, and I don't want to hear her excuses. He agreed, and had his assistant make copies. I asked when she will be served with papers. He told me about 2 weeks. I then thanked him and left. I went home to confront my wife when I arrived. She wasn't home, so I called her. No answer. Called again. No answer. I texted her, "I don't give a F. If you're writing J right now, get home, we need to talk." Lo and behold, she calls me not a minute later asking what I was talking about. All I told her was get home now. She arrives about 15 minutes later and I said to her, "Wow, look at that 15 minutes. That's about the same distance between here and Jay's, isn't it?" She looked at me dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she was just looking at me and I said, "Well, nothing to say." She tried to deny and gaslight me, and I let her continue on. She worked herself up and started to insult me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence at first and showed it from the side and said, "Look at this mountain of things I gathered on you." Then I showed her each printout at a time. She then tells me to stop and started to cry. She tried to apologize and tells me she loved me. I said, "Honey, what happened to that energy you had before? You were so adamant on degrading and insulting me just a minute ago." She tried to hug me and tell me how sorry she is. I put my hand out and told her, "Don't touch me." She says, "We'll go to the bedroom and do whatever I like." I looked her deep in her eyes and told her, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. I'm divorcing you. Now get a bag, gather your clothes, and get the F out of my house." That was 3 days ago, and I haven't heard from her. I'm sorry about how long this is and if there are any spelling errors. I'm curious to those have been where I'm at, what can I expect from here? Thank you for reading. Next story, Story 2, me, 44M, and my STBX, F39. Been married for 11 years. No kids. We were a pretty chubby couple until 2 years ago, when I had a blood test and it came out that I was prone to contracting diabetes, gout, and hypertension. It really scared me, and we both, bit by bit, started to have a very healthy life. I went from 117 to 85 kg, and my wife, let's call her Jane, from 83 to 65 kg. We felt great, and needless to say, I never developed those diseases. We attended to a gym almost daily in the afternoon where AP worked as a coach. Let A's call him Baldy. When my wife started getting in shape, I noticed most guys turned to see her. I felt so proud of her. She is fairly busty and she has magnificent legs. Of course, Baldy wasn't the exception. I noticed Baldy likes to check women's butt. I've seen him doing it several times, and he likes to show off how ripped he is. When Jane and I were regulars at the gym, I noticed she was enjoying the attention she got from men. Once, we were using the elliptical machines. In front of them, there is a cable machine. Baldy took off his t-shirt and started doing crossovers. I turned to Jane with my face of, "Can you believe this guy?" But she was staring at him and she wet her lips. I saw Baldy, and I swear he was grinning. I felt crushed. I mean, I was getting in shape, but I'm not as muscular and fit as he is. When we were driving home, I made a comment about Baldy showing off, and Jane said, "Really? I didn't notice." I told her, "You were staring," she said. "I don't remember." I must have been thinking about something else. I shrugged it and kept driving. But from there on, I noticed they were talking more frequently at the gym. Some weeks later, Jane was doing squats using the Smith machine. Suddenly, Baldy went to help her. Isn't he nice? He was grabbing her by the waist, and I got angry. She finished the first set, and I got there and told him in a not nice way, "I got it from here." Baldy just simmered and told me, "No prob, buddy," he calls everybody buddy, and walked off. Jane knows me very well, And when she heard my angry tone, she said, "My God, OP." I told her, "We'll discuss this at home." At home, drama blowed up. She called me immature and jealous. I told her I noticed he was trying to get into her pants. She said that she knows that, but she would never cheat on me. I said then why she let him touch her, and she said she didn't want to be rude. About an hour later, arguing, we agreed to change gym, so we went to another place to do exercise, but Jane was resentful at me in the following months. Her argument was that I don't trust her. On the third month after we changed gym, a very good opportunity opened up in my job, but in the afternoon. We discussed it and I took it, and we had to attend the gym at different hours. I went in the morning and Jane in the afternoon. This is when it all went south. Jane's resentment increased and we barely speak. I send her messages telling her about my day, that I miss her, memes. But she rarely replied or just, "Yes, okay, same here, ha ha ha." I was very worried and proposed couple therapy. She said I was the one who needs therapy because I'm the one with trust issues. I agreed. I was so desperate to fix our marriage that I even thought it was all my fault. So the following year, 2022, I went to therapy, but Jane's behavior didn't change. We weren't intimate anymore. She never was in the mood. I snooped to her phone but didn't find anything out of the ordinary. I looked into her car for a second phone. Nothing. I checked her phone again to see her map history. It only showed me housework, house, gym, house. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she just said she feels that she's having a 40s phase. It'll pass. I never had any evidence of cheating, so I continued working and worrying. We live in a condo. The security guard, a very cheerful man called Mr. P, greeted me. We chat a lot. He was touching his shoulder and told me yesterday he had to move a heavy sofa and he has some pain today. I was sympathetic and he dropped the bomb. "Maybe you can arrange a meeting with your massagist." I told him who. He said, "The guy who came yesterday to massage Mrs. Jane." It took me a second to process this. I told him, "Do you have a video of him?" I think he noticed I was pale and hurried to show me. Guess who? Baldy, of course. He has come a few times to massage my wife. I took the day off and started investigating. I asked a coworker for his car, and in the afternoon I followed Jane. She parked her car at the mall where the gym is, and there is Baldy waiting for her. They giggle and behave like a couple. Kisses, hugs, and I feel nearly to tear. They walk a couple of blocks and go into a residential area. I tried to follow them with my phone ready to record, but the guard stopped me and asked, "Can I help you?" I just said, "What a nice couple, do you know them?" He said he thinks they are newlyweds but can't tell me anything else. I called Jane but never answered. I went to her car in the mall and wondered why that place doesn't show on the map. I dial again and I can hear her phone inside her car. That's why. I also found out Jane hasn't attended the gym in 8 months. I didn't know that the previous night was the last day I slept with Jane in the same bed. I returned the car and went home and called my parents. Fortunately, my dad answered, and I told him everything. I was crying and he comforted me and told me to get evidence. Obviously, my marriage is over, and I need all I can gather while he'll contact one of his friends who is an excellent divorce lawyer. Jane called me when saw the 2 missing calls. I just told her I was already at home, and she told me, "I'm on my way from the gym. My butt is killing me." Yeah, I can guess. When she saw me, she asked, "What happened? Why did you cry?" I don't know how, but I was mentally focused. I smiled and told her I got the flu, that's why I left work early. "Don't come near me. It might be the bug. I'll be tested tomorrow." "I'll sleep in the spare room." She agreed. I cried silently and didn't sleep a wink. Nearly midnight, I heard her giggling. I guess she's messaging Baldy, but I didn't find any evidence of contacting another man. Then it hit me. Why didn't I see it earlier? I bet AP is disguised as one of her female coworkers. In the morning, while Jane was in the shower, I took her phone and created a session in my laptop and put her phone back in the same place. We both can unlock our phones. The session works while the phone is close to my laptop or in the same Wi-Fi account. Then I saw it. Under a female name, the profile picture was a dumbbell. I entered, and most of the conversations were deleted. I guess they use work words as code in case I snooped. "Can you deliver the papers in my desk?" I know she doesn't have a desk at work. "Going to the meeting, where are you?" On the top of them, "Boss is in his office." He's clueless. Pretty clever. I guess I am boss because I know her boss is a woman. Jane got out of the shower and saw me. "You look worse. Why don't stay with your parents?" I denied the idea, thinking of getting evidence. After Jane went out, I contacted my dad and gave me the name and number of the lawyer. I called him and explained everything. He told me the captions I took from my laptop are useless. They don't have any factual evidence since it's not AP's name, and she was smart enough to leave pieces of conversation that looks pretty innocent. I can take pictures of them at the mall, but she can argue they are just good fellas, and I can't invade into the residential area without permission because it might get me into more trouble. At work, I was in zombie mode, thinking how to get evidence. I might install secret cameras in my house, but Baldy rarely goes to my home and Jane might find them, unless I'm out of the picture. I texted Jane and told her I'm positive of the bug and I'll stay at my parents' because I might need help. She liked the idea and told me she would miss me, but she'll call me every day. When I hung up, I called my dad and my brother. When I got home, she had already packed a suitcase for me. She was so eager of getting rid of me. I told her I'll take my laptop, and then I checked her messages. Boss will be out of the office. Want to come to my desk? She sent this message almost after I told her I was positive to the bug. Good, she bit. We didn't have dinner, no kisses, no hugs. I noticed her watching her watch twice. From the door, I told her, I'll miss you. I was expecting her to shut the door on my face, but she walked me to my car, and I was gone. My dad and brother were outside the building waiting for Baldy to appear, but he didn't show up. After half an hour, I thought, why did she walk me to my car? Of course, because Baldy was already inside the building waiting, perhaps inside her car. It would be very suspicious if her massagist came at this hour. I came back, hurried to my house, and entered silently. I heard music coming from the bedroom and the moaning. Next to the door there is a sofa. His and her clothes were on it. I put my phone to record and opened the bedroom door, and there she was. My wife, the love of my life for 11 years in all four, and Baldy behind her. I got a very good seconds of both of their faces when they saw me open the door. Jane screamed and covered herself with the blanket. Baldy went alpha male, immediately walking naked towards me. I took a shot of him doing raw, my wife. He yelled aggressively at me, "Why don't go for a walk, buddy?" I hit his throat with my hand opened. I saw this movement in the Mel Gibson movie Ransom. The next second, Baldy was coughing and gasping, kneeling on the floor. I yelled, "Get out of my house!" and kicked him out. I threw his clothes at him when my dad, brother, and Mr. P were arriving to my house. I told them, "I'll take it from here," and closed the door. Jane was still on the bed covering herself. She was trembling. I told her, "I have never hurt you, nor will I. Get dressed. I'll wait for you in the living room." While I was waiting, I sent the video to my lawyer and he answered, "I'm sorry for you, but jackpot." A few minutes later, Jane showed up. She couldn't see me in the eyes. I started recording the conversation. I asked, "Why?" She didn't answer. "Was I such an awful husband to you?" She started crying but didn't answer. "Do you love him?" She shook her head but no words. I stood up and hit the table. "Say something, Jane. Damn it." She opened her eyes wide and started trembling again like a puppy when is scared. I have never yelled at her before. I sat and talked calmly. "My lawyer will contact you for the divorce. Get a lawyer." She finally spoke. "We can fix this." "Fix what?" "Our marriage was over since Baldy was on the picture, and you choose him over me." "It was a mistake." "No, it wasn't. It was a choice you chose, and this is the consequence. What did you think would happen when I find out?" Silence again. "Go to your sisters and tell her the truth, or I will show her the video." She went to the bedroom and started packing. I followed her and watched. Since 2 days ago, I was trying to convince myself my wife is long gone. The person who I shared my house with is not my wife. But seeing her, putting her clothes inside the suitcase neatly, with her gracious movements and those little things I love of her, hit me hard. I went to the spare room and started ugly crying. I heard when she closed the main door. She picked her clothes that were on the sofa. She made the bed where I caught them, and I dropped on the floor. So much later, I called my dad. He told me Baldy wanted to press charges, but Mr. P told him he didn't sign in, so he's trespassing. The condo can sue him. He dropped it and went out. My nosy brother pressed his ear on the door, and my dad took him from the other ear to his car. I was exhausted. The previous days I didn't sleep well, so I almost passed out on the spare room. Next morning, my phone had a lot of Jane's messages apologizing and asking for a second chance. I just blocked her. My SIL called me. Apparently Jane hasn't told her what happened, just that we're fighting. I guess it's good my FAL is not alive to see Jane's behavior. She was the youngest and his favorite. Emil has senile dementia. All this happened a week ago. Next week, Jane is going to be served. Next story, story 3. Buckle up, folks. This is going to be a long one. And I'm not going to use fake names because fuck the participants. They don't deserve anonymity. If they or their friends read this, it will be obvious who I'm talking about. First, the cast of characters. Me, 32M, middle manager in a large Fortune 25 company. Fairly career-oriented now, got my party days out of my system when I was younger. Allison, 31F, my GF of 8 years, living together the last 4. She is an office manager for a large veterinary practice. Also, my soulmate, best friend, teammate, partner in crime and future wife. So I thought. Leslie, 31F. Allison's lifelong friend since the 2nd grade. These girls are inseparable and do and share everything together. Dance classes when they were young, HS prom and homecoming. Allison was Leslie's MOH. Sorority sisters in college. More like sisters than friends. Leslie is a PA. Vicky, 31F. Great friends with Allison and Leslie, another sorority sister from college. Not as close as the other two, but nobody really is. But she is a constant companion to both Allison and Leslie. Vicky is an accountant for one of the big accounting firms. Brett, 30M, Leslie's recent husband after they dated for about 5 years. Decent enough guy, but I wouldn't call him a great friend. More like a very good acquaintance. Brett works for a large plumbing HVAC company that does sales and installation for primarily large industrial and commercial systems. A bit of a party boy who doesn't necessarily take his career all that seriously and a bit immature IMO. Jacob, 29M, Vicky's LT boyfriend. They have been dating for about 4 years and living together for 1. Again, a nice enough fellow but more similar to Brett in personality than me. Jacob is a landman who contracts out to oil and gas companies. TBH, I'm not really sure what he does. I just know he travels a lot and makes pretty good money. Now the background. Allison and I met in college. She was everything I could ever want in a partner. Gorgeous, smart, funny, extrovert, responsible. We didn't start dating until we both graduated and found we would be working in the same city. We made it official fairly quickly. I purchased a house, in my name only, 4 years into our relationship and moved in together. We had a great relationship. Great communication, fantastic sex. We started making made good money together, and most recently with my salary plus bonus plus her salary, we clear $350K per year, so we are very comfortable financially. Since it was my house and I made a lot more money, I paid the mortgage and most of the bills, and I had no problem with that. I even paid off her student loans and her car note. She saved most of her money and built up quite a healthy $401K, which I was fine with. Hell, we were going to be married soon, so it was a moot point, or so I thought. During our relationship, we hung out with Leslie and Brett and Vicky and Jacob quite often. Dinners, bowling, pool halls, movie nights, backyard barbecues, skiing, lake getaways, etc. Early on, we went clubbing quite a bit, but Allison and I grew tired of that scene, so we don't do that very much at all now. The other 2 couples still club and party quite a bit. Like I said, I loved hanging out with Leslie and Vicky, and the guys were okay, but I never really got close with either of them. They were very good friends with each other, though, but we were all friendly enough and got along great. Now on to the good stuff. Since we often do stuff as 3 couples, I was fine with the girls planning a 10-day trip to Cancun for the 6 of us. We were going to stay in a really nice, high-end, adults-only resort. Allison and I were really looking forward to the trip as we could both use the downtime, relaxation, and alone time. Unbeknownst to Allison, I was also planning to propose to her on this trip, and I had a ring waiting to give to her in Mexico. The week before the trip, wouldn't you know it, we had a crisis at work. My company needed me to stay. As is the policy in my company, if you have prepaid plans that need to be canceled last minute for critical business reasons, the company will reimburse you. So I got reimbursed for my flight and resort fee. While I was disappointed, I explained to Allison and she understood. Since she was really looking forward to going and spending time with her friends, I encouraged to go by herself and have a great time. I didn't tell her about the ring and figured I'd propose shortly after she returned. When the day came, I said goodbye and she took off for the 10-day trip. While she was there, I got a few obligatory texts and pics saying how much she missed me and wished I was there. Here's where the worm turns. On day 4 of the 10-day trip, I got a call from a very good friend of mine, David, saying he needed to talk to me. David is probably my closet friend and also works with Brett, and they are fairly good friends. Anyway, while in Mexico, I guess Brett called David to ask about some work stuff, and the conversation eventually turned to how was the Cancun vacation going. Brett proceeded to tell David that the trip was fulfilling some of his wildest sexual fantasies, that the five of them were engaging in all sorts of sexual exploits, including a group orgy. The dumb fuck, Brett, was stupid enough to document the activities and even sent some pic and videos to confirm his story, which David initially called bullshit. This is what David wanted to talk about. This next part is difficult for me to type since I have to relive some of the worst emotional pain I have ever felt. I met David, and he got right into it, telling me exactly what was going on in Cancun with the five of them. Like David, I also called bullshit and thought he was fucking with me until he said he has some proof that might be hard for me to see. I got super serious really quick and my stomach flip-flopped. He showed me his phone. While I won't get into all the sordid details, suffice it to say his story was confirmed, and I was broken to my core. Among the stuff he showed me, there were several pictures of Allison getting spit roasted by Brett and Jacob, pics of her having anal sex while eating Leslie's pussy, and a short video of the three girls having a very enthusiastic lesbian threesome. I was IDK. Devastated seems to light a word to describe my emotions. The crazy thing is, we had talked about FFM threesomes before, and she always refused, saying she just wasn't into girls. She also knows one of my deepest fantasies was to watch her make love to another woman. She always laughed and said that was never going to happen. I decided then and there, obviously, that we were done. I asked David to send the pics and vids to me in case I needed to confront her with the proof. Over the next few days, I packed as much of her shit that I could into a bunch of boxes and stacked them in the living room. I had a locksmith rekey the locks on 4 doors into the house, and then just sat back and waited for her to return. After the trip, she was scheduled to come home late on a Monday night, landing like around 11 p.m. Since it was late, she told me not to worry about picking her up. She would Uber home. I just sat in the living room with a bourbon and waited. About 12:30 a.m., I heard her key wiggling unsuccessfully in the lock. After several attempts, she rang the doorbell. There is a window right next to the front door, and I opened that window a few inches. She asked WTF was going on and to let her in. I just said she was never stepping foot in my house ever again. We were through and to get the fuck off my stoop. She was honestly dumbfounded, yelling, "Why am I doing this?" I said, "If you don't know, you are a fucking idiot on top of being a whore and a liar." She got silent. She knew I knew. She started sobbing, begging me to let her in, saying let her explain. She just wants to talk, etc., etc., etc. I told her, forget it. It's not happening and she's not coming in. Through her sobs, she asked me where was she supposed to go. I told her I left her keys in her car and told her go back and live with her fuck buddies, and I closed the window, blocked her number, turned on some music, and sat down and just zoned out. About 10 minutes later, I saw her car back out of the driveway. About 45 minutes after she left, I got a call from her older brother James, who lives in the same city and is fairly close to Allison. James is a great guy, a good friend, and someone who I respect and enjoy being around. He told me Allison showed up on his doorstep crying hysterically and saying she fucked up. James really didn't get any of the details from Allison, but he let her in and told her she could stay as long as she needed. James is a prince. I told James yes, we broke up. No, it wasn't repairable, and that I would tell him the story in detail some other time. When I said our relationship wasn't repairable, he immediately understood that to mean she cheated and said he was sorry. I also told James that there were about a dozen boxes filled with her shit that needed to be moved out of my house. He understood and said he would take care of it. True to his word, James and a friend showed up and took all the boxes. We chatted a bit. He said he didn't need any details but understood and agreed that cheating is impossible to come back from. Fast forward about 3 weeks. I haven't seen or talked to Allison or any of her friends since the night she left. Who should I get a text from but none other than Leslie? She asked me to meet her to talk. I told her I wasn't interested in anything she had to say. She begged and pleaded with me, said she just wanted to talk, and she wasn't going to try to change my mind. On the off chance that I could get some of the why, I agreed to meet her for coffee. My conversation with Leslie was eye-opening to say the least. First, she told me how sorry she was, and that what happened in Mexico was spontaneous and not planned. She said that the other couples had talked about swinging in the past but had never done anything, Things just got out of hand and that Allison had implied that I would be okay with her participation. She proceeded to tell me Allison was not doing well. She quit her job because she just couldn't drag herself out of bed, had lost a ton of weight, she didn't have much to lose to begin with, isn't taking care of herself or her hygiene very well, and has rarely left the house. I took it all in with some indifference. I basically told Leslie that those were Allison's problems, not mine, and Allison would have to deal with it. I told Leslie I don't necessarily hate Allison, but I just don't care about her or what happens to her any longer. She may as well be a stranger living in another country at this point. Leslie simply could not comprehend my indifference. She begged me to talk to Allison, to let her explain and give her some closure. I told Leslie I wasn't interested in any excuses, reasons, justifications, explanations, or anything else. I didn't owe her closure and wasn't particularly interested in helping her get over her guilt. But I did have some questions. I asked if that was the first time Allison cheated on me, and she sheepishly said yes, with a guy. WTH. I asked her if she and Allison had had sex before, and she lowered her eyes and said yes. Apparently they have been enjoying each other's pussies on the regular since high school. My jaw absolutely hit the floor. I was in a stupor. I told Leslie about my fantasies about Allison, and Leslie already knew all about them. She had even encouraged Allison to invite her into a threesome with me, or just have sex with Allison while I watched. Leslie was turned on by the idea, but Allison refused. I can't fathom why. I also found out that this was not the first time the girls, Allison, Leslie, and Vicky, had engaged in a lesbian threesome. They had not done it often, but definitely not the first time. Again, my heart just fucking sunk. So these two fucking losers, Brett and Jacob, got to share my fantasies with my girlfriend. I thanked Leslie for the talk, but told her that solidified in my mind that I wanted nothing to do with Allison ever again, and told her I would also be cutting off the other two couples for obvious reasons. Leslie left the conversation in tears. I sincerely felt nothing for Allison, and don't care where she winds up. But still, it felt like a fucking elephant was sitting on my chest. So 2 questions, Redditors. AmITheA for refusing to speak to Allison. And how do I get back into dating? I'm not one for dating apps, and Allison and I have been together for so long that I am out of the game. If you've read this far, thanks.